I just wanted to thank you for coming tonight. I'm really excited. This is the first time we've done a kickoff for our league day, and this is just so we can learn a little bit more about the issues, so we feel a little bit more prepared when we go to the Capitol. I know sometimes it's a little bit intimidating. This is going to help you be a more effective advocate for next Tuesday and really through the whole year. And before we get started, I just wanted to let everyone know that this meeting is recorded. And then if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and put it in the chat and we'll try to answer them. And you can go ahead and introduce yourself. Let us know where you're tuning in from this evening. We hope that we have people from all over the state joining us tonight. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Fran Wagner, who is our president of the League of Women Voters of Kentucky.
Thanks, Jen, and welcome to all of you who are joining us for the Zoom meeting and kickoff for the League of Women Voters Day at the Capitol, which will be next Tuesday, February 21st. The Kentucky legislative session is now in full swing, and it's important that our voices be heard. Legislators are writing and passing bills that will impact all of our lives. And unlike the old saying of what happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas, well, that's not true with Frankfort. What happens in Frankfort doesn't stay in Frankfort. It impacts us all. And that's what the League is all about, is to try to be informed and active citizens in the democratic process. And so the legislature needs our voices. We have a terrific team here to give us the information we need to be informed and effective lobbyists. And with whatever time you can give, whether you lobby before or haven't lobbied before, we're here to get you up to speed. So let's get to it. So it's my pleasure to introduce Cindy Heine, who is along with Mary Jo Rogers, our legislative liaison, and we'll just get cracking.
Thank you. I think I'm unmuted now.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm going to give you just a quick rundown of some of the issues we'll be talking about, but we're going to focus primarily tonight on the issue of restoration of voting rights for persons with felony convictions. And Luana, you can go to the next screen if you want. Jenna, looks like there is an annotation thing on the screen over on the right, green little paper clip. I don't know if you can turn that off.
Actually, I think that's Mary Jo Rogers. If Mary Jo, I don't know if you've got annotation turned on, if you can.
I don't know how to turn it off. I've got one, but I'm trying not to pay attention to it. So voting rights restoration is our prime issue. And we have a bill right now, and that is House Bill 97. We're hoping for a bill that is sponsored by a Republican in the Senate this week or next. And if we get that bill number, we'll certainly get it to you as quickly as possible. In Kentucky, when a person commits a felony, they permanently are banned from voting. Kentucky is one of only 3 states that does that. And we think it's high time Kentucky get with the rest of the states and start correcting that and letting people vote. Once they have completed their sentencing, there's no reason why they should not be able to vote. In order to change the rules about that, we have to amend the Constitution. And in order for that to happen, the legislature has to pass a bill that would put the issue on the ballot. And House Bill 97 does that. The one thing we don't like about 97 is it does require a 5-year waiting period for citizens to get other rights back, such as the ability to run for public office or the ability to serve on a jury. We'd like to see that be fewer than 5 years. And we'll see if a bill shows up like that. Now, the problem with voting rights restoration in this particular session is, even though Senate leadership has finally come around and said they would support a bill like we are proposing, they are now saying, because they lost the 2 ballot amendments last fall, they're a little amendment shy and they're not going to pass any amendments this session. Now, we'll see if they stick to that, because there are 2 issues that are pretty hot button issues that have now been filed that require amendments. And we'll just see if they do what they say. But the problem is they usually only allow 2 amendments on the ballot. And if they have other amendments that they prefer, our bill might get short shrift. So we're up against some challenges. Let me just say there are some other issues that we'll be talking about next week. We'll have some talking points and more information for you. But there are some election issues that we are interested in. One would make local races partisan. That would be school boards and city and county commissioners. We do not have a position on that because our state and local policies don't speak to that. But we are going to be talking about it and asking questions. There is another bill that would allow people with a permanent address, without a permanent address, to easily get ID so that they could vote. There are some kind of crazy bills that would call for hand counting, which we think is sort of a ridiculous thing. And then there is an interesting bill that would call for ranked choice voting. That's another issue that the League does not have a position on. National suggests that we create our own studies and our own positions. And so we may be doing that this coming year. And then there's one bill that is a particular irk to me, and that is Senate Bill 18 is a campaign finance filing bill that would allow candidates to go back to paper filing. The problem with that is there's not enough staff in the office that manages campaign finance reform to input all of that data into the computers. And so we are going to oppose that bill because that means the public won't have access to that campaign finance information. There are a lot of things going on. Let's see, that's a money and politics issue. Redistricting and fair maps, we dealt with a lot last year, but the courts now have the congressional district maps and the House district maps and are to rule on those in the near future. Sure, it won't happen before the session is over, but if the courts rule against the legislature, they'll have to go back to the drawing board and we'll be back to working on that issue. In the meantime, we're going to be constantly reminding legislators that their process this time was pretty lousy. There was no opportunity at all for public input, and that's not the way they should be creating our district maps. Let's see, I mentioned, let's see, in education, there is some attention being paid to the need to recruit more teachers. Probably a couple of good bills that we'll see. The Crown Act has been refiled, and that's the one that allows students to wear their hair any way they want and not be discriminated against. But then there are some kind of nefarious bills that are being labeled as right for parents bills or the rights of parents bills that are working against issues around LGBTQ children or students. So those are ones that we're concerned about. And then there are a couple that are directly related to the LGBT community. And those are probably not going to go anywhere, but we'll be watching them pretty closely. There's a lot of that conversation among our more conservative legislators, and it is a little disconcerting. We're not going to get into healthcare a lot, and probably not too much in terms of environment, unless some big bills come along that we are concerned about. But we'll be talking more about these. Oh, and there's two others here that I didn't list. One is the death penalty. We've had a long held position, both at the state and national level, to support abolishing the death penalty. And there is a bill filed actually by a Republican that would abolish the death penalty. I doubt that that will go anywhere, but the fact that a Republican filed it is a positive. And then I think I did mention, if I didn't, reproductive services. We did vote no as a state of voters against the amendment last fall, Amendment 2, that would have abolished abortion. There is a new amendment bill that was filed just yesterday, I believe. I need to read it a little more closely, but my understanding is it is trying to address the kinds of things that were so egregious to the public that they voted no. Again, that's one of those amendments that Senate leadership says they're not going to file amendments, but they could get pushed pretty hard on this one to push it through. So, and I understand there's another really difficult bill that I have not read yet. It may have just been filed today, but there was a news story tonight about it that said it would criminalize the mothers if they had abortion. I need to find out more about that, but I'm sure that the league will take positions to oppose those kinds of bills. And that's all I'm going to say. We're going to get some really good information about restoration of voting rights. Actually, our new number is 68% in our report that we release next week. We will announce that our latest poll done last month actually shows that 68% of Kentuckians agree that voting rights should be automatically restored after completing a felony sentence, after completing all of their sentencing. So that's good news. Next slide, I think. Yeah, we've already talked about this. I'm sorry, I forgot I had these slides. Okay, and so now we have some other speakers that we're delighted to have. And we'll be glad to answer questions if you pop them in the chat or if we have time later on.
Cindy.
Yes.
The one thing that you didn't mention in your list, and I know you meant to, was the proposed amendment for private money to be
oh, yes,
for public money to be used for private schools.
Yes. There is a bill that would put an amendment on the Constitution that would allow public tax dollars to be spent for private schools, private and parochial schools, any private school. And that would, there was a recent Supreme Court decision based on the Constitution that said that that was not feasible, that they couldn't do that, and they couldn't do the tax credit bill either, because that is basically public money going to private schools. And so the answer to that from our friends in support of private education is to try to change the Constitution so that that is no longer a provision. That is a bill that we will oppose. And that is, let's see, that is just a piece of information, House Bill 174. Thank you, Fran.
All right, any other questions right now? All right, great. So I want to go ahead and introduce Jessica Roloff. She is our regional organizer for the League of Women Voters. And she will be doing our grounding moment and introducing our next speaker.
Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. I've met some of you I haven't had a chance yet, but yes, the LWUS board has made a commitment to not only exploring organizing for the past couple of years, but it's actually become its own department. And it is being built out as a regionalized department. And so I have the Midwest, and somebody decided Kentucky's in the Midwest. And so I'm your contact person at LWVUS, and I am here with Luana to really help to support the work at the grassroots level. And so you'll be seeing more of me. I put my email address in the chat, and I would hope that Fran or anybody in Kentucky, Jen, could pass along my email and phone number if somebody needs it and wants to talk with me. So that's an invitation for everybody. I was really excited when I heard Kentucky was working on the restoration of voting rights, because let me just tell you, my grandma used to have a saying that watch out who you get mixed up with, because it'll determine the course of your life. All right. So in 2012, I got mixed up with League. I went to a holiday party, I joined. And by 2014, I was a local president, and they sent me off to national convention. I met some women there from Washington State. They are the first people who ever introduced me to the issue of the restoration of voting rights. And so I came home from that national convention in Dallas, geared up and ready to go. Then I just started Google searching what was going on in Minnesota. And through that, I found something called the Restoration of Voting Rights Coalition. And I have met some of the very best friends that I've ever made in my life in my home state through this coalition. And so when I found out you guys were embarking on this journey, I thought, well, I can certainly bring somebody to talk about this journey, somebody who's been on it, I think, even longer than I have. So just to frame this for you, the Restore the Vote Coalition is a coalition of 8 faith organizations, 4 labor organizations, 13 direct service organizations, 6 public safety organizations, and 43 civic engagement and advocacy organizations. So all of these people were able to get together and decide that this was an important issue, because we knew if we were going to push it over the finish line, it was going to take more than just League. League is one of those civic organizations, but that tells you the kind of work and the kind of movement that you have to build around these types of issues. So I've invited here tonight one of my friends that I met along this journey. I am so grateful she was willing to join us tonight. And I got to listen to a lot of Eritrean music today, Wintana, because I was looking for the proper pronunciation of your last name. So of course, Google provided me with hours of great music. So I want to welcome Wintana Melakine, and she is a policy expert with a decade of experience passing public policy at the city, state, and federal level. She is a key partner in the Restore the Vote Coalition in Minnesota and is familiar with the decades-long work to pass the restoration of voting rights in Minnesota. She now works as a consultant at Civic Eagle, helping organizations in their mission of increasing access to democracy. Wintana specializes in helping customers succeed with pro tips for getting policy work off the ground. And I'm happy and proud to say that Wintana and I have known each other since we were the clipboard carrying people. And now we have different titles. So welcome, Wintana. I'll turn it over to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you so much. I thank you for that introduction. Thank you for all the work that you've done locally and nationally. Thank you. And I appreciate that you said my name right. It's rare. So I appreciate that. As she said, my name is Wintana Melakine. I'm based in St. Paul, Minnesota. Context, I am Eritrean. I was born in Northeast Africa, moved to the States when I was 3, to really start from the beginning. Voting rights has always been a passion of mine. As a refugee, the minute my dad became a citizen, he took me to caucuses and conventions. I've been going to League events for as long as I can remember. I've always been a voter and things like that. I had always had a passion for democracy, but I had never really worked on it as a formal issue. outside of door knocking here and there for a candidate or a governor's race, things like that. But in 2012, after the death of Trayvon Martin, I quit my I quit my healthcare job, and I just became a full-time organizer. I went on from 2012 until now, working on voting rights policies all across the state of Minnesota, and even some federal policy and some good local stuff. But that's a little bit about me, a little bit to talk about the campaign and everything we've been up to. So some context. The first record of this bill being introduced was actually in 2005. I actually just graduated high school. And at the time we had State Representative Keith Ellison. He's now our Attorney General. Before that, he was our US Congressman. He also was the Attorney General that prosecuted the police in the George Floyd case. So he's been an epic hero for a very long time, doing lots of really amazing work. When he authored the bill in 2005, he was very straightforward about it. His reasoning was that in the state of Minnesota, Black folks were wildly over, Black folks were the folks that were losing the right to vote. It actually calculates to 1/4 of Black men in the state of Minnesota don't have access to the ballot because of this law. Some context, Minnesota has some of the longest probation periods in the country. We have folks that will sit on probation for 20, 30 years for very petty charges. An example I can give is that I had a young man that was a part of a community group that I was working with who had stolen something from a store. It was worth more than, I want to say the number is $1,000 or something like that. But that's considered grand larceny. He caught a felony as a minor. They charged him as an adult. He was on probation for 10 years. As a child, doing something wildly irresponsible, stealing from a Walmart, shouldn't have done it. He now has lost access to housing, lost access to his right to vote, and it was just consistently a deterrent. Fast forward some more examples around how this bill impacts folks is that my family has a restaurant. On election day. They wanted to shut down the office and say, hey, everyone, like come, volunteer in your community, go door knock, everyone just have the day off and go vote. And the staff specifically said, hey, can we actually just stay open? We found out majority of our staff had probation because server jobs are usually the only jobs that folks with felonies can get. And what we ended up realizing is that all of them said, I don't like to be outside. I don't like to see the red stickers because it reminds me I don't have the right to vote. I don't feel like I'm a part of the community, and I'd rather be at work making money than sitting at home. And so these are some of the experiences that really changed me and really brought me into this work. Going backwards in time, 2008, this bill is introduced. 2012 is when I joined it. Just to talk about what was happening in Minnesota in 2012. We had a GOP majority. To be nonpartisan, I like to say an anti-democracy majority that were working on lots of really terrible things, like a ban on gay marriage and also working on requiring voter ID. They put both of those initiatives on the ballot. They lost horribly. Minnesotans came out in very large numbers saying, absolutely not. We do not want voter ID, and we do not want banning gay marriage. We went back to the legislature and we said, great, now we have to pass felon voting rights and we have to legalize gay marriage. And we were able to legalize gay marriage, but we were not able to pass voter ID. We were not able to pass restore the vote. Us as a coalition, we've been together ever since then. I've been working on this issue for 10 years, since 2012, and it's been on my radar since 2010. We have worked every single angle. We have worked every single path that we could. I have worked on numerous candidates campaign. I've worked on primaries. We've done everything we've had the ability to do to try to win this campaign. In 2019, we said, oh, I almost cursed y'all. That's how upset I am. In 2019, we said, no, this is too much. And what we actually saw was that the legal, the way that it was written in the Constitution of Minnesota is very similar to how it's interpreted in other states that allow people to vote while on probation. So the ACLU actually carried a lawsuit and sued the state of Minnesota. It went through level of court. Just to note, this was in 2019, October 2019. You guys might have an org in Kentucky, like a pro Kentucky or a C3 voter turnout table. I was the director of the Minnesota table at the time. And the ACLU took on the burden, they took on the cost. They found plaintiffs that had been denied the right to vote saying, hey, our interpretation is wrong. We need to fix this. And it didn't get a hearing, Then it finally started getting its hearings. We are waiting for a verdict in the middle of 2020. It is very uncommon to wait 4 years to get a verdict. We thought we didn't know what was happening. This is a very uncommon occurrence. It took us 2 years to just get heard, and then it took us 2 years to get the verdict. So amazing, amazing news moving around in history. This last November, we won a pro-democracy majority in our House and Senate. We also have a pro-democracy governor. That was a game changer. That was in November. And I'll be honest, no one expected it. Nobody had a clue that this was going to happen. We've had the last decade of being one of the very few states with mixed government. Every single time, there's always one chamber that belongs to a different party. Fast forward, the day after Election Day, I was on a work trip, and I was literally logging into the Restore the Vote website. Like, do I still own the domain? Who has the Twitter handle? Someone called the ACLU, and we pulled our coalition back together. We had all just been waiting on the legal response from our Supreme Court to figure out what was the position of the case. Our coalition, like Jessica said, came together overnight. We rebranded. We got the bill written. We found the co-author. Found the author, and just to discuss who the author of our bill is. After we won the pro-democracy majority in the Senate by 1 vote, we have a 1 vote majority. It is very rare for a state senator who's the president of the Senate to author a bill. He said, I'm authoring Restore the Vote. It's the only bill that he's authoring. And that's because he said this is a priority. He was actually the author of the bill after Keith Ellison left State House. This author, Senator Champion, replaced Keith and took on this mantle and made the decision to sacrifice a lot of political capital and said, no, it's not millions of dollars here or there. I'm getting my folks the right to vote. He represents the district that has the most amount of Black folks that have been disenfranchised by this policy. Fast forward, we have now moved this bill through the House. It has 0 amendments. It's a very clean bill. We have moved it through all of the committees in the Senate. It's still a very clean bill. It has no amendments. What we're afraid of is the carve outs, like saying not this type of person and not that type of person. We've been able to block that. Last night, while I was doing Valentine's Day, literally I literally have my Valentine's Day gift right here. It was a tray of strawberries. I was sitting there relaxing. We get a notice. Supreme Court has made a decision. Very uncommon. They usually give you a week's notice. This is my 3rd Supreme Court lawsuit that I've been a part of. This is ridiculously very rare. What we know while talking to our Senate author is that our bill was likely to be heard on the Senate floor next Thursday. So we're just planning for that. We're doing turnout. We're ordering t-shirts. I've got a box of signs in my trunk right now and everything. Supreme Court last night said, oh, we have a decision. We're going to announce it at 10 a.m. today. So 10 a.m. today, while working my day job, because I did not know we were going to win a majority, I was trying to sneak off a Zoom and read articles. And what ended up happening is we lost our lawsuit, but it's not the end of the world. It actually worked out very well. The interpretation of the lawsuit, and again, I'm not an attorney, but this is kind of my civilian reinterpretation of it, is that the way that the Supreme Court, the state is reading the Constitution is not incorrect, but the state legislature has full authority and should change this policy. So the Supreme Court actually kind of gave us a boost and said, all right, legislature, we know some of you are probably waiting on this verdict and don't want to vote until the verdict is out. We need you to get this done, is pretty much what they told them. And one thing to note, there's a footnote in the bill that specifically says, and this also applies to people inside of prison. So this really opens us up not only to pass this bill probably next Thursday, but to also then begin a conversation around voting in prisons like you have, I want to say, Massachusetts or Virginia, I can't remember which state, but somewhere on the East Coast. And so that's where that's at. And then the last thing I'll add, we are a state without automatic voter registration. We are, as soon as we pass this next Thursday, that Friday, we're hoping to pivot the coalition into AVR. We see AVR just as much as a part of Restore the Vote. particularly because majority of people on felony probation do not have a proper address on file with the Department of Justice or Department of Corrections or Secretary of State. And so we're hoping when they go get a driver's license or they do something, we'll be able to automatically register them. And so it really is a convergence of saving all of us the time so we don't have to go find 66,000 people in the state of Minnesota. A bit of other context, sorry, just to pull up my notes. While it is true 1 in 4 Black men don't have the right to vote because of this law, a majority of people impacted are actually folks that live in rural Minnesota. So, and that's a majority white population. So there's a large amount of folks that are impacted by this. It's going to have a tremendous impact on our democracy. And I'll pause there and see if folks have questions. Like, please ask away. I want to answer it all. And actually, I'll add one thing before I jump. You're seeing our coalition list here of all the folks that are with us. When we were not in the majority like we are now, that coalition list was a lot longer of public safety organizations. And one thing to think about when you're thinking about strategy is that the reason our public safety list has shrunk is because they're actually supporting us behind the scenes. And now they're in this weird position where like, oh, you're in the majority, you're gonna win. Where before they saw it as like trying to, scratch my back, I scratch yours. And now what's happened is that they may have decreased in public support and, public recognition. They've actually been doing a lot of work behind the scenes. And so that's just one thing I always recommend when working on this issue is look for non-traditional partners, look for folks that would want to be in coalition with you. But I'll pause there and see if folks have questions, want to answer them all.
I think, Watana, would it be possible to speak a little bit on how did the coalition start building? Was it literally going group to group? And maybe how do you hold a coalition together through that much time? And were there ever any tensions that had to be worked out?
Absolutely. There were tons and tons of tensions throughout the years. I joined in 2012, and at that point, it had a name. There are folks that had already been working on it. It started around 2010. In 2005, 2008, it was really an idea, and then it really flourished from there. It started with mostly folks that were criminal justice experts. So folks who are working on the policy from an intellectual level, but not really in the field and in the community. And they reached out to folks like me and other community organizing folks and said, hey, how do we pair together? We have the intellectual portion of it. We have the data, but we need the community backing. We need to make this the center of gravity. We need to really build out. And so that's what we started to do. We also, when we were seeing more folks get elected that were anti-democracy, we started building coalitions across the lines. We did really in-depth data research into who's going to get the right to vote. And once we realized a bulk of them were folks not in the Twin Cities, we knew that would resonate with our rural supporters. Even though we have a pro-democracy majority in Minnesota, we have bipartisan support on the bill. We have 2 Republicans in the House, and we also looks like we might even have a supporter in the Senate. And so one thing to think about is where do these people live, and how do we get the legislators to understand that these folks could be voting for them? It shouldn't have to be that way. It should just be a moral issue, a democracy issue, but you do what you got to do. And then the other thing I'll add, a big part of this is that the folks that show up for this, are the folks that really care. It is not the sexiest issue. There isn't massive amounts of funding for it. People know that folks with felony probation have less likelihood to get the right to vote after getting off of probation, as if they do gain that right back. And so it's not, it's not that. It's really about, do you care in your heart? Do you believe that these people are human and deserve the same access to this country as you? And we've been able to recruit really solid partners. We've been able to recruit folks that have nothing but passion in their heart to get it done. And so that's been a little bit about it. I mean, it's one of the first bills I ever worked on. And so it's indescribable to think something took a decade of my life. And I'm like, oh, it's just going to get done next Thursday. Yeah. Oh, and then one thing I'll add, before this last November, every Wednesday night, I was hosting a phone bank calling on behalf of candidates who cared about social justice or who cared about democracy. And so I know obviously everyone on this call is nonpartisan, but do turnout in districts where you know that people who care about democracy live, so that the people who turn out to vote can go apply pressure on those elected officials. Even if you can't sway the election, you definitely can help get the right people voting who can go talk to their legislators about these issues. Any other questions?
I think you've given everybody a good taste of what we've done. I had the same feeling, Wintana, when I walked into that hearing room a couple of weeks ago. I had this feeling like, I can't believe this is actually going to be happening, because I was one of those people out in rural Minnesota hosting a phone bank from my kitchen. We were just calling people saying, hey, do you know what the restrictions are for people who have felony convictions in this state? Do you think it's fair? Like this affects, I think at that time we were using the number 57,000, and just really having those conversations with people. And it took those kinds of conversations with people to get them to really understand the issue, and then be willing to actually raise it as something they were concerned about. Because like Wintana said, it's not the sexiest issue. It's not the thing that everybody necessarily has a personal connection to, but we can all be connected to supporting democracy, and we can all believe that everyone's a human and deserves a right to vote, so they can be a part of our community. So thank you so much, Wintana, and go ahead.
I want to add one more thing. I just dropped the link in the chat. So what this link does is that it actually takes you to the Minnesota version of the bill, and then also the Kentucky version of the bill. So if you want to look at both of them, see how they're different. I know one of them's ballot initiative and the other one isn't. So you can check that out there. And then also I'm going to drop my email in the chat. I am always down to chat with folks who have questions. Like, I'm always down to, if your core team has questions, we want to be assets. If you need materials, what we used on messaging, any polling, anything that belongs to us belongs to you. We want to support y'all. If you have a big event coming up after Thursday, after we win, we would gladly come down to Kentucky and help. So just let us know what we can do to be an asset. We're fully available. We want to see you win, and let us know what we can do.
Thank you so much, Montana. That's amazing. So exciting to see that these things are possible. It takes a lot of hard work, and I know sometimes in Kentucky it can get a little discouraging, but thank you so much for sharing that with us. And now we're going to hear from, I'm going to get my screen share going again, but we're going to hear from a woman in Kentucky. Her name is Allie Mills, and she is joining us. She did a pre-recorded message because she couldn't be here with us this evening, but I'm going to go ahead and get, oh, are you all seeing my screen? For some reason, it's very, very tiny on my, okay.
Yeah, we're up to full screen now.
Okay, great, thanks.
Hi, everyone. Sorry I'm not able to join you tonight. I'm a new mom, and this is the bedtime routine hour for my 6-month-old. I appreciate the opportunity to share why restoration of voting rights is important to me. I'm probably not who you picture when we talk about someone with a felony conviction. 6 years ago, I made a horrible, life-altering mistake and was thrust into the justice system, a completely foreign and demoralizing experience. Only 3 days prior, I had just voted in my second presidential election for 2016. I was beginning to feel more confident in my beliefs and take an interest in politics, I was 24, and I'll never forget how on fire I felt walking to the polls that morning. It was still dark outside and cold, exhilarating. I felt a part of history in the making. Since then, it's been easy to form a bit of resignation towards what goes on in my community and around the world because I feel like I no longer have a say. I lost that right. There's a lot of privilege in my situation with how I look, my education, and massive support from loved ones. And even with all that, there have been times I've wanted to give up because of all the hoops the legal system has had me jump through. You really have to be willing and able to put forth the time and energy it takes to do your own research and advocate for yourself in order to re-enter the world. So if I've struggled with that, I can only imagine how much more difficult it is for someone who doesn't have the same privileges afforded to them to fight for their rights. The League has given me a way to still feel a part of the voting process, even though I can't legally cast mine. I don't have a felony conviction that allows my voting rights to be automatically restored, and have recently submitted an application for this. You truly don't know what you have until it's gone. I was only getting started when I lost my right to vote, and it's now more important to me than ever that people exercise this power since I can't. I have served my time and am off probation. Kentucky requires a constitutional amendment to change the law to allow people in my situation to be automatically given their rights back. This is why it is important for you to leave messages on the legislative messaging line or meet with legislators on League Day to support legislation that restores voting rights to Kentuckians. I'd love to make my son proud one day when he hears my story and sees firsthand how I didn't let it keep me down. My voice still matters. People say they believe in second chances, but shouldn't that include everyone? Thank you.
And now we're gonna hand it over to Cindy to talk a little bit about League Day logistics.
All right. If those two stories weren't inspiring, nothing will inspire us. Thank you. You have to be sure to thank Allie for us, Jen. So the agenda very quickly for League Day is we begin about 9 o'clock, and we'll take a half an hour to register people. People can learn about OutreachCircle and get assistance in getting online with that. And then we're going to have, I didn't get this changed. We're going to go from 9 to 10 with our program, talking about bills, orienting you to the day's agenda and what we be doing. And then at 10 o'clock, we're doing a press conference. We are releasing our new report. I got my hands on the galley version today. It will be printed and we'll be giving it to all legislators. It will provide updated information, and we'll have copies for you if you want them. The press conference will be in the same room, take about a half an hour, and then we'll go back into our program and go until about 11:15 or 11:20. Then we're going to take everybody outside unless there's a blizzard and take a group picture in front of the Capitol. And then we'll move to the cafeteria where we'll have lunch and chat, check in with each other. The most important thing for the day is visiting with legislators and or going to committee meetings. Committee meetings are incredibly informative. We'll have the schedule for you so that you can pick the meetings that you want to go to. But what we really need to have you do between now and Friday is determine who your legislator is or who you would like to speak to, and make a call and make an appointment. I was in Frankfort all day yesterday, and Wintana, we have a coalition like yours that brought almost 200 people to the Capitol yesterday, just focused on voting rights restoration. And it was a fabulous day. It worked well. We don't have quite that big a crowd, but it was really exciting to see everything that was going on and the number of people who were lobbying for the first time. But it was very clear as we walked up and asked for appointments, and as I called to make some appointments for people, that there were no appointments to be made yesterday unless they were made ahead of time. And they often preference their constituents. The number is the number up here, Luana. On the next
OutreachCircle.
no, it's not, but the number is 502-564-8100. That's in all of our action alerts. You'll see it in a lot of places. We'll send it to you again, but 502-564-8100. Just ask for your legislator and ask for their assistant, and their assistant will help you. And they're all very kind. I've talked to a lot of assistants over the years. Couple of changes. You have to enter the annex at the front door. You can't go through the basement any longer. And the doors don't open until 8 o'clock. Fran and I waited outside in the cold for 35-40 minutes before we got in yesterday. Part of that was because it was such huge crowds. I don't anticipate quite that many people next Tuesday, but do plan to maybe have to wait a while. You'll need your identification, and they'll ask you where you're going. Just tell them you're going to the League Day and you're going to go to room 171. They aren't really searching bags anymore. They don't have you carry them through the metal detector. They take a quick peek at them and then you're on your way. And we're asking everybody to wear their league buttons. And if you don't have league buttons, we'll have some for you in the meeting room. Next slide. If you don't know this, we've sent this in the registration information, but if you don't know the Capitol and the annex are across the street from each other. And if you go into the Capitol, you've got to go in the front door, so you have to walk all the way around. If you go into the annex, you have to go into that front door and go through the screening process. The parking garage is, as you're looking now at this, is over on the left. And you would park in that garage. The elevator in the garage is very strange. Instead of going from 1 up to 6, it goes from 6 up to 1. So when you get in the garage at level 6, you want to hit the number 1 floor button. That will take you out. Show the next slide, Luana. You can see where the annex is, and you can see where the parking is. You would park in the garage, come up to the top, and then just walk to the front door of the annex. You can also, if the annex happens to be really full, you can park around behind the annex. If that garage is full, you can park behind the annex. Or you can, if you want to, park on Capitol Avenue and walk all the way up the street, but that's a pretty long stretch. That would get your steps in for the day, that's for sure. Okay, next slide. I think that's about it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else you need to know about getting into the building. I think that's pretty much it. Any questions? If
Yes.
you've got questions, pop them in the chat. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Cindy, can you put that up again about, you said it was a list of things to remember to do. It was that one in person. If you would leave that up long enough for people to take some notes or take a picture of it.
Okay. The other thing that I missed, that's the very most important thing to do, is wear comfortable shoes, because you do quite a bit of walking. And if it's raining, bring an umbrella, because if you have to wait outside, you want to have an umbrella.
Well, and I have been there in line with people who forgot their ID. So be sure you have. I don't think they ask as you go through, do they?
Oh, the ID? Oh, yes. Yeah, they have.
do.
They want to see an
Oh, okay.
ID with your picture.
Right. Okay.
And all of this information is on the website and also on our outreach circle. So you can find it there on the website. It's just on the homepage. If you look for more information, we have additional information will be posted there. But of course, it's always in the app, and that's going to be a key piece of, it's going to be a key tool that you're also going to want to use for League Day as well. I'm going to talk for a moment about League Day logistics for our virtual attendees. This year, we're doing a little bit of like quasi-hybrid event. We're going to be having some programming or kind of more check-in time for people to meet with us on Zoom. And for this agenda, in the morning, we'll have just virtual networking. We'll kind of get a chance to know each other, and then we'll have Fran, who's doing the welcome. We'll be seeing her video from there. And but then we're going to be just kind of being online and supporting each other's, but virtually attending committee meetings, completing our digital league actions that are available on OutreachCircle, and I'll be on the Zoom all morning and here to like troubleshoot any questions that you have. I'll probably be watching committee meetings too. So just kind of, you know, if you want somebody to chat with about something that's happening in a committee meeting. And then at 12:30 or 1:30, we'll have an optional debrief. So where you can come back and share what you learned with the other people that were there during Advocacy Day, and looking at maybe they went to a different committee meeting, or maybe they had a Zoom meeting with their legislator. I have been on a Zoom meeting with a legislator, so that is also possible to set up if you aren't able to go to Frankfort in person. So a lot of great options. So our program virtually is not going to be exactly like the program that you're going to get when you're there in person. It's going to be focused more on the things that you can do virtually in terms of, but there's a lot of stuff to access in terms of watching what's going on the legislative floor, we have video, you know, you can watch video feeds of what's going on in committee meetings. And then of course, I'm sorry, somebody have a question? Okay, so, and then of course there's all the actions, and we're going to have all the ways that you can call a legislative messaging line and all of those different things that you can do using OutreachCircle. And of course, you'll also be able to use OutreachCircle while you're there in person, and Luana will talk a little bit about that as well. So, and there are, I'll just mention this, we are going to have the LRC website has live streams, but you don't have to remember this website. Like, it's all going to be an OutreachCircle. There's direct links there. So all you got to do is press the button and you'll be able to see all of the committee meetings and stuff. And some of the, and I'll go ahead and let Luana talk about a little bit more about OutreachCircle, and this is some of the things that we're going to have available for you on our hybrid legislative action day.
Thanks, Jen. So hi, everyone. I want to be conscious of time, so I'll wrap us up today. So I'm Luana Chires. If I have not met you before, I see some familiar names in the chat. I'm the Digital Relational Organizing Manager at LWVUS, but this year I have the privilege of actually joining you all for your hybrid lobby day in person. So really excited to see the work that's happening. Again, everyone on this call, all the speakers have really emphasized the importance of keeping that momentum going. Even if it doesn't feel like we're making progress, we are making progress. So a really big shout out to the League of Women Voters of Kentucky to, again, setting up this day in a hybrid fashion. Some folks are going to be going there, but some folks are not going to be going there. Most of our friends and family may not be joining us for lobby day. So we want to make sure that for folks who have never used OutreachCircle, it is our organizing platform, our digital organizing platform for the league. So as Jen already mentioned, it's just going to be convenient for you to see all these actions there. But also specifically, we are going to be leveraging our own relationships. So if you are not talking to someone right now, as the other speakers already on the call have already mentioned, this is a movement type of work, and we need to be talking to our friends and family. So if you have a minute, if you are, you are still getting comfortable with scheduling your own legislative appointment, or you are still getting more comfortable even talking about this type of work, whether you're talking about it with your friends and family or with your legislator. But please follow the league on OutreachCircle to get all these notifications. Again, this is not going to be over on Thursday for us. It's a long battle for us. So make sure you are registered to sign up for it, especially the virtual attendees. You all will be having very interactive actions for that day. And some of those actions would include interacting with actually the committee videos or meetings and trying to give us feedback on that, or please joining the debrief. So especially if you have a friend or a family or someone who could possibly be interested, feel free to share the virtual link with them. This is going to be an open space for them. So again, not everyone can be in Frankfort that day. It's a lot of traveling sometimes. It can be hours for folks. So feel free to, if you are going in person, bring that one other person virtually if you can. You can go on to the next slide, Jen. These talking to your legislator tips will be shared afterwards. I'll connect with Jen and figure out the best format to share this all. But essentially, these tips go through how to schedule an appointment, how to prep for your meetings, how to actually conduct the meeting itself. If you only have 5 or 10 minutes, and especially that post debrief. But you can go into the last slide, Jen. We'll make sure everybody has this. I want to be conscious of time afterwards. But most importantly, just remembering, go back one slide, that you all most likely are going to be visiting with your legislator. So you are constituents. So if you don't have an appointment, I am in Texas. I used to work the session. Feel free to pop in. Feel free to say hi. Ultimately, especially for this type of battle, we are going to have a relationship with them. So feel free to pop in, say hi. If they have a minute, have the pitch ready. I know Cindy mentioned we're going to have talking points, but if you don't know where all that is, it's going to be on your OutreachCircle. So if you are intimidated, you don't know where to get those talking points, you don't know exactly what bill number that we were looking at, that will be on there. Legislators do want to hear from their constituents. And I think that's something that we sometimes forget, that it's not just us, but our friends and family could also be making this call. We are in this fight. We showed up today at 8 p.m. to have this conversation. So we know we're in it, but making sure that we're bringing other folks with us. And again, lastly, we can be firm in our position because we know we are not going to compromise on this, but we're going to be polite. These are real people. So again, if you don't have an appointment, highly encourage you to have an appointment, but don't be afraid to pop in and say hi. But I will be at the Capitol along with you all. So happy to chat more. If you have any questions about the technology, I'll turn it back to Jen to close us out. But really excited to looking forward to seeing all of everyone in person. And if I don't see you in person, we'll most likely see you virtually. Thanks, Jen.
Sorry, technical difficulties. My computer was bringing up an error message about the, anyway, so thanks so much for coming tonight. This is going to be really awesome. If you're wondering how to get your OutreachCircle app, you can get it by scanning this QR code on my screen. And I will make my screen a little bigger just in case you need to scan it. But this will bring you directly to the League of Women Voters OutreachCircle, and it's a great way. We're going to have tons of new content on there. Also, one thing that I want to mention is that when you download the app, it's the first time you're doing it, be sure to turn on the app notifications, because we're also going to be, that's a way for us to communicate with you that day. So if there's an issue with the parking garage, or if a room we got changed out of a room, or there's some like on the ground change, we can communicate with you that way. We can just send you a quick phone notification. It'll pop up on your phone, and we don't send them out that often, but it is a great way to for us to do just that in the moment communication. So then we're able to get you where you need to go and have a great day at League Day. All right. Anyway, any other questions that people
Jen,
have?
let me just share a quick story about the meeting yesterday. I was taking students around yesterday and they wanted to see their senator, but when we went to his office, he wasn't there and they got a few minutes to talk to his assistant. But as we walked down the hall, guess who came walking down the hall? Their state senator. So we caught him in the hallway and had a quick 5-minute conversation, pointing out to him why we were there, why it was important. And he got to meet some of his constituents. So we'll help you do that too, and help you find meeting rooms where your senators or legislators might be. There are lots of ways to connect with them besides a sit down face-to-face if you don't have an appointment.
And Cindy's the best. I remember the first time I went to the Capitol, I went with Cindy and she just showed me all around. So it was a wonderful experience. So thank you everybody for coming tonight. And we look forward to seeing you on Tuesday, whether you're virtual or in person. And we'll send out a follow-up email after this. Make sure you have all the information. And then of course, you can go to our State League website, which is lwvky.org. And I guess we will sign off. Have a good night. Thank you, everybody.